Well, my name is Manuel Molina Martagon, and I went to Memphis. I think it was the first that happened in the US. So I feel that sort of changed a lot of the initial expectations of what the residency would be. Because I felt like something that for me that was very attractive from the idea was to be able to go like someplace where, like I was supposed to go to Georgia, to Tbilisi. So that meant like no language, totally being out of a space that you don't know, and really in a place that you also don't know. And then for me, going to Memphis in a way was more than going to a place that I don't know, was going to a place that I sort of know. Like I've been in the US long enough to know the different settings from a place like New York or like San Francisco to like something that can be like Memphis in this case, or like Missouri, or some small town America. So in a way I felt more than sort of switching from this idea of like the New York hustle, it kind of changed into like more like a Memphis hustle, and then also it was more than more than taking a break from the always, especially in these days, this situation where it's always about like the US, how you present yourself, how you navigate the situations of who you are, how you are perceived, how people understand you, and then it's kind of like all this mad that happens when somebody meets somebody. And so instead of having like a break of that and then going into different set of rules really meant to be like, oh, where are you from or whatever, I just kind of went deep into more like a distilled version of like America. And also it was an experience that was like a Black America, in the sense of what Memphis means from like historically and socially and so many things. So I felt I just was experiencing all this for this very funny like time period that can feel like feels like nothing, feels like a lot, keeps on changing depending on which day you are. So I think that's kind of like more like a general sense of what it was to like get into a experience in the US without your set of well-known rules. And for me, some parts were very, very powerful in the sense of like connecting to even to like a physical experience of why I spent some time in the Midwest, like in Missouri. So I was connected to a lot of experiences that was happening like 15 years ago. So for me, just kind of like walking these like streets that had very little sidewalks, or this kind of situation, like totally like connecting me to the person and the feelings I was having when I was like walking those like Missouri streets like 15 years ago. So it's totally like unexpected, and that also like included a lot of like meaning and a lot of situations that of course you guys have no idea, and it's not part of what you're planning, but this kind of was like a very particular way to reconnect to my previous, one of the first US experiences I have, and also what it means for me in the sense of like time passing from like life, from art, from like all these situations, and then having this kind of weird experience that happened through walking, for example. That was kind of like a very powerful thing that was kind of like unexpected for me at all from this situation of being in Memphis. So it's a month. It's very different when in Memphis you are having barbecue or you listen to music or having some moment of that, and when you're like trying to get the groceries and the supermarket is also closed because there's no power, and there's like, so sometimes it was like New York, like maybe this is the whole like a device to make you appreciate New York again. But no, I feel like I did certainly have some sort of like different sense of attention when I was walking, for example. Because back there it's more like, I mean, the streets are more like avenues, like super long, and most of the times if there's a sidewalk, it's like you're next to the car, so you're hearing all the brum brum and the cars like passing next to you, and the city is more like empty, so you don't really see people, and what you see are people that are living in the streets, or this kind of like situation that you just know what's happening, so you kind of walk in a sort of sense of like this place. I think it's kind of the opposite, like you have to be like kind of taking care of yourself in an empty space, and that's because it's empty feels kind of like eerie and this kind of weird, and I mean, because things happen here in New York too, but the feeling of here is that you just feel like safer in a sense of like with people and the buildings and the streets. So I feel that the very first days I still have this sort of like, the mode of kind of like walking in Memphis. I had to like switch back. It's like this is gone. Like now we're back to our easy walking thing. And then also I feel like one of the things more funny. It's like how you like how it is stripped. How I mean, I think it's like a nice sort of like contract. Like here's a month of my life. You guys do whatever you want with it. And then I get to live sometimes in these days where, for example, like Memphis was closed mostly on Tuesday and Monday. Those days were kind of like closed. So I just usually just stay home and did some cooking or something, or like was there. And I feel like these few days that I've been here, since it was President's Day or these kind of things, I was some sort of like not quite feeling back home, feeling still a little bit of the situation of this kind of Memphis vibe of like, there's must be something happening at noon. I must go somewhere, or like I should be back, and there's gonna be like some program online or something. And no, there's nothing. Well, but I didn't have to do stuff in the morning, so it felt like I was gonna go to like noon or like coming here or like seeing somebody. I kind of feel this sort of like, yeah, like 2 or 3 things every day kind of vibe. I mean, just a sense of discovery of how we as like humans sort of adapt to things, and how you kind of start making it feel like your own. I mean, I feel like even the way I experienced the Airbnb was very different the first week than the last one, in the sense of like how much I was like using of the space, or where I was spending more time, or how this thing. The way I think I'm good with like going places, so I kind of like with maps, I kind of sort of like know where I was going. I kind of, I mean, at the end of the period, I kind of know which sort of general sense of Memphis, like where you want to go, or like how long it takes to get there, or like which streets, or those kind of things. People were very friendly, and I feel there was a sense of people I met. There was kind of like, hey, so you've been here for a month. We want to start like, let's have lunch, or like feel like continuing this relation that you just happen to meet somebody. I do feel that sometimes it's tricky when you're like coming in like through this Apex Star program, because sometimes it feels that it can be a way to feel like exotic or feel like special, which feels kind of weird in certain contexts. So yeah, the way, for example, I was introducing myself, I feel also kind of like change or adapt depending on where I was, and also like if this was week 1 or week 4. Because yeah, it was like I'm here. I'm not like the chosen one to have this experience, and it's so fantastic. Or like people, for example, sometimes they try to like sound like, knowing that I was from New York, they just felt they had to kind of like compensate this sort of like the city. I love New York. I've been this or this kind of thing, that it was never like required. I felt something that was very unexpected was the ice storm. I think that was one of the things that was nature, and it was a thing that also this feeling of U.S., of how people have to deal with nature, and how, pretty much every place has its own like, the different degree of danger of problems, but I feel it's like how the whole city like changed, or how the whole city had to adapt to these moments. Well, I feel for me, maybe it wasn't that. It still is like it's like very intense, but it wasn't like maybe as dramatic as it could be, because I'm used to do like freelance. So in a way, I'm used to have like random days turn into like random days, or like do things on a Wednesday or a Monday or a Saturday. And there's not a line defined of like 9 to 5 sort of situation. But I do think that somebody that's really having like a day job might find it very kind of like challenging. I don't know. It's just yeah, it's very unique. The sense of like, here's my time. Like whatever you guys pick, I'll go, and I'll like do it. It feels sometimes you're like a character, like you're this kind of like playing like an actor playing somebody's life. Like I feel sometimes like me being the usher in the theater, and this kind of this weird like moment between like, you know, somebody being Karen and with some other people from the show, from the audience. But then I'm just like there, and I'm like, I'm just here seeing this happen. This is not my story, or this is I'm not this character, and I'm just seeing things like, yeah. Sometimes it gets you to like positions where you can see things unroll in a very unexpected or very like closed space. I feel it's coming. I'm totally biased because with cameras, but as a photographer, you have this experience or video to go into places and look at them very closely, but also you don't belong them, and you know you end up maybe leaving or going back and forth, or even if you're there, you have this kind of like distance from things. So I feel like there are many moments where the residency puts you in like those spaces, and it's really cool. Um, I do feel that, yeah, I mean this idea of how do you present yourself in this kind of like spaces. Um, how do you Yeah, I think it's sometimes it's tricky. I feel also. I mean, I don't know. It really depends on I guess on the person, on the fellow. Depends on the place. Depends on the culture. Maybe if this happens in like, I don't know, some other country would maybe a different thing. But there's a part that sometimes it feels a little artificial, like the way relationships are like set, and also like sometimes the rules how these things can change. Because I feel like maybe in a place like New York, if you're coming here and you have this kind of like apex art experience, yeah, I think it's very easy to like come in and out of spaces without having this need to like relate, maybe because of the city or because of whatever. But a place that's more like kind of like small town, there's this sort of like feeling that you are some sort of like gonna belong or gonna be part or gonna be like welcome as somebody that's gonna be like stay here, you know. So I feel that's kind of like again very like unique and depending on each case. But I feel that's kind of something that was tricky about like how do I relate with people, or more like how does this relation continue or dies in that sort of like moment. Um, and I mean, I do have to say that what you guys are doing is amazing, and it's such an enormous like labor of working and figuring schedules, and that's crazy. I mean, I always felt like, you know, even as things might have like, you know, problematic at the beginning, I always felt care. I always felt like that with Emily, for example, like she was amazing. Like maybe this without Emily would be a totally different experience, you know. And we will have been more like an issue of like, you know, not having a place to stay during the ice storm, maybe like try to get a hotel and maybe they're all booked, and you know, this kind of like story that will have developed in I don't know what, you know. But I mean, this idea of like when they were like willing to like lend me their car, that's such a like your uncle kind of thing. Like I wasn't really going into it because it's like, I mean, U.S. insurance, all this like all this weird stuff. Like I don't want to be like crossing between like third party like lending. I don't know. Maybe it's easy, but I'm just kind of like very paranoid when it comes to like U.S. stuff like that. But yeah, just those kind of things. I mean, at least I felt I was very lucky, and I felt that with this or that, like anywhere you do it, it's kind of like a wedding or something. Like you can do everything perfect, and something will be wrong, and somebody will not be happy, and something is the worst thing ever, and somebody will be like that. So yeah, I mean, without saying those kind of things, I felt it was such of a moment where for me, I think the hardest part for me was the very first 2 days, kind of like adjusting the idea of what the residency was about, because it felt very strong when I was kind of like in the bus, for example, having to wait for the bus, and you know, three buses should come, no one comes, people are waiting, and of course this is all like African American, and of all this is kind of like the history of like redlining and the history of all this, you know, it's kind of like the symptom of all these sort of things that are happening, and I know some of it. You know, it's not that I've never been close to any of those situations, and I can understand this feeling of like, I mean, just kind of walking on the highway feels like this kind of like second class experience. That in a way for me was like, for me, I'm here, but I'm gonna be gone. This is just for me here. Where people are here, and this is their life, and this is their everyday. that was very integrating. And that's not with Apex art, but there's this feeling of like rage of seeing this happening with people as like in a normal everyday, was very painful and hard and like unfair, and it's kind of like the scene that I always see when the girl, that she just gets to like McDonald's and she get to work and the manager is like, you're late. This is the third time you're late this week, and the girl is like, I'm sorry, I'm waiting for the bus. Or it's kind of like, it's exactly those kind of stories. So yeah, I mean, for me, like kind of like having that experience, and also like kind of switching from the idea of like, wait, I was supposed to go to like Tbilisi and experience this weird like space, into more like, okay, it's gonna be like deep down America, so let's embrace it as it is. And yeah, I mean, that was something I was very happy that experience, and I do feel that there was a much of things happening inside my head and my